act upon a very important piece of business that has come before us. We continue to ask that you lay your healing hands on those that are sick and suffering, and wrap your loving arms around those in need and provide them with the comfort and hope. Protect us from evil. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which we stand, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. All right, are there any amendments or corrections to the agenda? Seeing none, there being no amendments or corrections to the agenda is adopted as presented. Has everyone had a chance to look at the minutes from the September 21st, 2023 meeting? Yes? Are there any corrections or amendments? Seeing none, there are no changes. The minutes are adopted as written or approved as written. Public comments? Public comments for the agenda items only. We're limited to 3 minutes. Seeing none, we'll move on to financial report.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Board. You have the financials in front of you. We've spent about 9% of our budget so far this fiscal year. There wasn't anything out of the ordinary on there, but if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to hear them. Okay, thank you.
Good. All right, moving on to election supervisor update.
All right, just a few things. We do have our, as you all are probably aware, Deborah's leaving us at the end of the year to retire. I'm trying to guilt her into staying, but, so we have advertised for our position. It is on the Camden County website. So please, if you know anyone, pass that along. We've received 22 applicants so far. I'm still going through those. Haven't scheduled an interview just yet, or interviews, but hope to do that soon. Our current voter numbers for active voters are just under 37,000 voters. Deborah and office staff have been working diligently with our voter roll list for national change of addresses, movement out of the county, out of the state, inactive voters. What else? How many hundreds?
I've had probably 800 or 900 returned, and I've already forwarded them to the forwarding addresses.
Gotcha.
About 509 of them.
Yeah. So she's been super busy getting those notifications back out because we do have to continue to forward them again to the new address that's listed on the yellow sticker on the front of the envelope. So by the end of the year in December is usually when the voter roll everything shakes out, and we've got people moved if they were supposed to be moved, or whatever the situation might be, canceling a voter if they've been inactive for 9 or 8 years. So it takes a lot to get a voter off the roll. It's not very easy with the movement as far as change of addresses and things like that. So they can't be voting as well. So we're working on that right now. I just gave you our voter numbers. We've got about 41,000 total voters. So the other 5,000 are inactive voters. And they're probably, some of those people are on our list right now. On a clock, basically, and they've received a letter. So we're waiting to hear back from them. And you'll notice Dennis is missing today. Dennis is in Charlton County. Today starts the day of advanced voting for those counties and cities that do have elections coming up this year on November the 7th, I think. So he is there to help Charlton County, who just recently, last week on Monday, hired a new election supervisor. So he's assisting them in getting their machines ready and all that good stuff. So he's been a big help. They love him, and I've already told them they can't have him, so he needs to come back to us. He will help them today, and as long as everything goes smoothly, he won't need to go back maybe on Saturday, because we do have Saturday voting as well. But he's doing well there, and we have a agreement with Charlton County, so they will reimburse Camden for his time. Okay, and Chairman, that's all I have.
Any questions for the election supervisor? Seeing none, we'll adjourn this meeting and convene a public hearing. Camden County Board of Election Registration public hearing is called to order. As required by Georgia Code 21-2229, this hearing is convened to adjudicate the elector challenge by Margaret A. Boodle of Dr. James H. Burnham to remain on the Camden County list of electors. Georgia Code 21-214 Foxtrot requires that this and all hearings be conducted in public. I am Kyle Rapp, the chair of the board and a presiding officer. I have with me Barbara Hahn, Clara Harden, who is our vice chair, Kelly Stofflet, who's a board member, and Julie McCullough, who is also a board member of the Board of Election and Registration. Is the challenger here? All right. Is the challenged voter here? All right. Here's the process of the hearing. Per Georgia Rules and Regulation, Rule 2295-11-02, all testimony given at this hearing shall be under oath. The oath shall be administered by Shannon Nettles. And per 21-2, rules of evidence will be in accordance with 21-1-24. In accordance with the 21-229, the burden shall be on the elector making the challenge to prove that the person being challenged is not qualified to remain on the elector's list. And here's the order of presentation. The challenger shall present their evidence. The challenged voter is allowed to cross-examine. Once he is done, the board will have an opportunity to cross-examine also. Do you have any other witnesses with you? Okay. So that'll be the challenged voter. If he decides to make a statement, he will have his opportunity. You'll have an opportunity to cross-examine. We'll cross-examine, and then we'll adjourn the meeting. Any questions? All right, with that said, Ms. Shannon, can you oath or swear in the Ms. Boodle?
If you could stand, please. Do you solemnly swear that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under pains and penalties of perjury, so help you God? Thank you.
Please step to the podium if you plan on making a statement or providing any additional
You won't
evidence.
have my information, but I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Margaret Butel. I've lived in Camden County since January 25th, 2020.
Can you move the microphone up?
Oh, I'm sorry, I got used to it. The first thing I did when I moved here was to register my cars and to register for voting. And I immediately applied to be a poll worker. Voting is very, very important to me, as I'm sure it's to everyone else. And I'm just, as the secretary of the Republican Party, I received a letter of ex officio member, and I felt it was my duty to investigate. And that's what I did, and you have all the paperwork in front of you. And if you have any questions for me, I think it was pretty clear what I did. I didn't go back a third time because I was told that I was harassing someone by knocking on their door. And from this evidence, since I never saw Mr. Burnham, I concluded that he did not live at that residence.
Do you have anything else for the board?
No, that's it.
Can you remain there, Mr. Burnham? Do you have any cross-examination questions?
Not really. I don't think so. But was my application to be a member of the board what prompted you to do this?
Yes, sir.
No one prompted.
No, sir. I did this on my own.
All right, any questions from the board? I do have a couple of questions.
Sure, sir.
When did you realize that Dr. Burnham, his name was on the deed to 204 Candy Court?
I looked it up before I even went to, the deed, that was just recently, because when I looked up in the tax records, his wife with her, maiden name or her other married name, I don't know what it was on the deed. And then I knew that, so I knew that, I thought that the place was then rented because Mr. Burnham's name wasn't on it. Apparently, it was changed over to both their names. And then the mailing address was the vacant property at, on Osborne Road. And so I made some conclusions, but I wanted to further it because integrity in voting is very important to me, and I just want the truth. That's all I want is the truth.
Did you follow up with the tax assessor's office to make sure that,
Yes, I
It
looked
was-
at the tax assessors, and it was, at that time, it was going to the Mrs. Burnham's house in Yulee. That's where the tax records were going.
so you actually spoke to the tax assessor?
No, I didn't speak to him. I just
Okay.
looked up the records.
Okay, so you did online,
Yes,
and the online records aren't updated, as far as the ownership, but maybe twice a year. Now, as far as the deeds are concerned, once they come into the tax assessor's office, they're uploaded immediately. So if you look on the tax assessors or the Q Public.
I
if you
did
could-
look
If you
in-
could bring that up, Ms. Kayla? Q Public?
I did bring that. Unfortunately, when I left the house, I had my paperwork on
Right.
the thing and forgot it.
So if you could scroll down just a little bit. This is more of a, maybe a training thing. Keep scrolling. Okay, come back. All right, so this is what it looks like if you look it up on your phone.
Mhm.
You see where there's the columns, radio tab over there on the right-hand side? Normally, if you look it up on a PC, that, all the columns will be filled. So if you look it up on your phone, that's all you're gonna see.
No, I looked it up on my computer.
You looked it up on your computer. Okay, because normally all the columns are filled up.
Right.
And you would see that when you pulled it up, wherever you pulled it up in September, you'd have seen that on 1/10/23, the deed was actually executed to put it in both their names.
Right. That was my mistake in saying
Right.
that.
So just for future reference, make
Mhm.
sure that you look at everything
I sure will.
and then follow up with the tax assessor office and maybe even the clerk of course to see if there's a deed filed.
Right. Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Any other questions? You may be seated, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Burnham, do you have any testimony?
Yes.
Shannon, can you swear him in, please?
Do you solemnly swear that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under pains and penalties of perjury, so help you God? Thank you.
Please come to the podium, state your name. And speak.
My name is James H. Burnham. I've lived in Camden County since 1977. I opened a business here January 78. I was in that business for almost 43 years until 2019 when I had an eye surgery, which left me unable to see. So I had taken 10 days off from work to have the surgery done and never went back. Right after that surgery, well, let me go back. I first registered to vote on June the 17th, 1968. It was a very proud day for me. I got off of work that day. I was the first one to the time clock to punch out because I was on a mission. I was going to register to vote and to register for the draft. And I felt very proud. I wish I could instill in young people today the pride that I felt going to register to vote and also registering for the draft, even though I knew that I might get to go see Southeast Asia. As it turns out I did not, but for the next 10 years, I never missed an election. I voted in Dodge County elections for the next 10 years. 2 of those years, I lived in Davenport, Iowa. I didn't move my voter registration because I knew where my home was. One of those years, I lived in St. Mary's, trying to get enough money to get back in school. One of those years I lived in Atlanta, doing the same thing, working at J.C. Penney's catalog distribution. I never moved my voter registration until I got married and lived in Dodge County. I moved it 3 addresses down because the house that I was living in was 3 houses down from where my parents were. My wife was registered to vote in Chester, Georgia, which is also in Dodge County. Her father was the mayor there. But she moved her voter registration to our house. And whenever I went back to school again, we left our voter registration in Dodge County because we both knew where our home was. When I moved down here, even though I still had property in Dodge County, I knew I was never going to live there again. So I moved my voter registration here. Now, during the time that I was here, I've always used my office as my mailing address. The reason I do that is to avoid having people come to my door and knock on my door, bothering me about stuff I don't want to be bothered about. Now, during that time, I did have some incidents that made me really glad that I did that. During the 80s and the 90s, I was very active in the Republican Party. In fact, there was no Republican Party in Camden County until I organized it in 1984. It had been organized back in the 60s during the Nixon campaign, and my uncle was the chairman at that time. During the 1980 campaign for president, Jack Gross had organized it along with Charlie Smith Sr., not the junior but his father. And a couple other people that worked at the telephone company had come together and had organized a party during the 1980 presidential campaign, but they never bothered to reorganize after that. So I reorganized, I think it was in 83. Now, during the 80s, twice my sign was damaged, once by a gunshot that went all the way through it. My window at my office was shot one time. And then I had the sign damaged again by apparently a marble and a slingshot, I would assume. I found the marble inside when I disassembled the sign to get that repaired. That's some of the reasons that I prefer not to have my voting address, because I feel relatively sure that it was some of my political activity at the time, as the county was beginning to turn from blue to red, and somebody didn't like that, or they didn't like some of the letters that I used to write to the editor when I could see how to read and write. Now, during the time that I've lived here, my first residence was on Ann Street. I was registered there. Then I moved to Point Peter, and I registered there. And then I moved to Bristol. Well, then I moved to Coleraine Road. I lived there for a while. I continued to get my mail at 1836. Then I bought a house then I built a house. I already had the property, but I built a house in Bristol Hammock. During that time, I had to move my registration to Kingsland. That was the only time I was not registered to vote in St. Mary's. But I still received my mail at my official address, 1836 Osborne Road. I still own that property. I still use that as a mailing address. It is not vacant. It is being rented by a subcontractor, a painting subcontractor. I have disconnected the power that was in my name there and the water that was in my name. It is now in the renter's name. But I still get mail there. But I also get mail mostly about official business at my home residence, 204 Candy Court, not 210 Candy Court as you wrote in the, and also there's no Osborne Avenue in St. Mary's. There's an Osborne Road and an Osborne
Please address
Street.
the board. Please just address the board.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. But where was I? So that's some of the reasons that I do this. Now I would like to show you some documentation. I'm visually impaired, so I really can't see.
Okay. So the board will take a look at the evidence and we'll hand it to the challenger so that she can also look at the evidence. Okay, I don't want to hold on to your driver's license, but it does say it expires in 2026 and it is from Candy, 204 Candy.
Thank you.
Okay. There's the assessors. The shutters in the name. It's the old one.
Now, when the person that went,
Just a second, the information you gave us is old from the tax assessor's office. It still shows just your wife's name in there. Do you have anything?
That was what came in the mail to us. We didn't.
Correct. Okay. Can you pull up Q Public again?
Sorry.
Just so that we can take a look at it and scroll all the way to the top. Okay, can you go down where it says owner? All right, so this is the current Q Public, and it does show that James H. Burnham is the owner of it, and it was executed on a deed back in January of this year. Yes.
okay, back to my voter registration. I was in a bad relationship at the time. When I moved back to St. Mary's, I moved to Magnolia Street. I lived there for a couple of years. Then I bought a house on Acorn Street. I lived there for a while. Then I moved to Palmetto Street and sold my house on Acorn Street. After my eye surgery in 2019, I decided I needed to remove myself from the relationship that I was in. So I moved into my office, which was vacant at the time because I could not practice. Well, I don't know exactly what the rules are for living in commercial property, but there was no business there. So I kind of kept that low profile because I didn't have any place else. My sister, and I was being visually impaired, I needed some assistance from time to time. And I have some extended family that would provide that. But my sister asked me to come stay with her. And I did that for about 2 years. It was after that period is when I married Nancy. Now, I still maintain my legal residence as 204 Candy Court. When I filed my taxes, she and I filed taxes separately. I file my taxes in Georgia, she files hers in Florida. I think we fought a war about taxation without representation. And I maintain that I am qualified as an elector based on all the evidence I've presented. I have ownership of a home. I'm a resident there. I have 2 roommates there, and they were harassed. The first one, and the only reason I did not take out, or we did not take out a criminal trespass warrant is because Dustin, the first person she encountered.
Sir, that's a separate matter as far as the criminal is concerned. We understand that she went to the house. And can we move on from that?
Well, we can,
Okay,
but if she ever comes back again,
that's between you and her and not the board, okay?
okay. So, what questions might you have for me?
Do you intend to remain a Camden County resident?
I absolutely do.
Okay. Go ahead.
Chairman Rappin, Mr. Byrne, the only reason I bring this up is because this was information that was in the packet. The application for homestead exemption, it was dated in May of 23. It says that is any part of that property rented, talking about Osborne Street. That's a commercial property.
Actually, if you look in B, section B, it talks about 204 Candy Court. He put his mailing address on the top.
This one?
Yeah, on the top, and
Okay.
then a Candy Court down in section B. I made that same mistake also when I first read it. But the homestead exemption is for 204 Candy Court.
Yeah, there's no homestead exemption on 1836 Osborne.
No, can't be. It's
Thank you
commercial.
for clarifying that. Okay.
So one of the rules for becoming or staying a resident or becoming a resident of Georgia is if you have a homestead exemption. Now, I understand this is just an application, it has not been approved yet, but
That's correct.
but if you can prove that you, and this is between you and the tax assessor, it has nothing
Yes.
to do with the board. You just have to prove that you live there.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions for the board? Challenge, do you have any questions? You're allowed to crop.
Do you live in that house?
I do. I give the roommates a very good rent agreement because they're sharing it with me.
Don't live with your wife and you live.
Where I sleep is my business.
I just thought where you sleep is where you reside, and anyone can own property and rent it out and not be a resident.
You know, I recall that once, during the time that I've been here, I served as a precinct chairman for the Harriet's Bluff precinct for almost 20 years. During that time, I made every effort to observe all the election laws as they applied. The only time I ever challenged electors was when I knew that these people were not living in Camden County, but Charlton County, but they were voting in both counties.
Are you registered to vote any other county or state other than Camden
I've
County?
never been registered to vote anywhere except Dodge County until 1977 and Camden County until today. And I hope will be tomorrow.
Is that all? Mr. Burnham, is that all?
Unless you have more questions.
I do have one.
Yes, go ahead.
This reminds me of the movie Blazing Saddles. Now, the only reason this came about is because I wanted to continue to participate in the Republican committee, which I've participated in longer than anybody, because there was not one here until I started it. I have served on that committee for probably 40 years continuously in some office. Now, I understand that there is a new regime that doesn't always agree with me. And I've kind of made my reputation being disagreeable when I believe that I am correct and they're wrong. But this reminds me of Cleavon Little in Blazing Saddles pulling the gun on himself because she's supposed to be a Republican who is supposed to be supporting the growing the Republican Party in Camden County. Instead, she's out trying to remove legal electors from the list. I am going to start a petition to have her removed from the committee for cause.
Sir, that has nothing to do with this meeting today.
Okay.
We do have more questions from the board.
Mr. Byrne, I just want to clarify one more time. Do you live in Yulee, Florida?
I stay there sometimes.
Thank you.
I also spent most of July in Nevada, but I don't live there.
Any more questions?
I have one more question.
Mr.
For the 204 Candy Court, part of that property is rented?
And that's going to affect the home exemption. I'm going to find out how that affects it. I don't know that yet.
Thank you.
Questions?
I guess I had one question because he says sometimes he stay in Yulee. Could you, about what percentage of the time would you say that you reside?
I don't think I have to answer that question because unless my wife asked me that.
Ms. Beadle, you're allowed to rebuttal if you would like.
All I can say
Please
is
come up to the microphone.
All I can say is if I was allowed to go back and just knock on the door, I wasn't trespassing. I knocked on the door and asked if Mr. Burnham lived here, and I left directly when I was told
I
to leave.
understand that.
And I would have gone back to find out more if he lived there on another day or something. But after the man followed me, I did not want to go back there. And I just thought I had my evidence by them telling me to get off the property and not ask questions. And the lady said she lived there. So that is all. She didn't say Mr. Burnham lived here. She said, I live here. So that's all I can say.
Yes, sir, go ahead. If it's relevant to the public hearing.
The second time Miss Butel went to our house, she did not knock on the door. She fiddled with the lock because there was no cars in the driveway.
Sir,
Yes,
let's,
I think it is relevant. I think
relevant of whether you're a resident of Camden County? No.
Relevant to what she did.
We're not here for that, sir. We're here to determine whether you're a resident of Camden County or not. Anything else? Anyone else? All right, the hearing is adjourned. Reconvene the special called meeting. New business discussion concerning elector challenge of James H. Burnham to remain on the Camden County electors list. Do I have a motion to accept or reject the challenge? I will make a motion to reject the challenge. So is there a second? Motion fails. All right, we have two choices. We can either adjudicate this today or we have to have a continuance.
I move to have a continuance.
Okay, when would you like this continuance? All right. It's been moved and seconded. We have a continuance. We do have this Thursday at 4 p.m. available. Yes, we will have to approve that. I'm just trying to clarify when we will be able to do a continuance.
Can we do it at board meeting? Schedule for Thursday.
Yes, that's what I was planning on doing.
I'd like to do that.
Okay. All those in favor of a continuance till October 19th at 4 p.m., say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, moving on to item 2, 2024 meeting schedule for the Board of Election Registration. Has everyone had a chance to look at the proposed Thursday, second or third Thursday of the month?
Yes.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve?
Third.
Third Thursday?
I thought we were changing.
No, now that we're closing our business, Thursdays work for me.
Say that again, please.
Now that we're closing our business, Thursdays really work for me.
Okay.
Do they work for you?
Thursday's not good for me.
Okay,
The third Thursday of the month is definitely not good
Okay.
for me.
I'm
So
good for Wednesday also, if you would like to.
I would like to propose that we make.
All right,
the
make a motion.
Wednesday. I'd like to make a motion that we make our board meetings for the third Wednesday of the month.
The third
at
Wednesday of the
4
month.
o'clock.
Okay. Is there a second?
I can second that.
Okay, any discussion? The only discussion I would have is on the election days that we have moved the meetings to Monday, but we can address that later.
That's fine. We can address
Okay.
it now. Like,
All right, any other further discussion? All those in favor of moving our meeting to the third Wednesday of the month at 4 p.m., say aye.
I,
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, 2024 intergovernmental agreements with all 3 municipalities. Has everyone had a chance to look at those?
yes.
Could I ask you a question?
Sir?
The time and date, and this, we continue, need to be here, what time is that?
4 p.m.
And it's gonna be the
It'll be right here this Thursday,
Thursday or Wednesday.
Thursday. We just voted on our meetings for the
Okay, that's what I was
2024.
confused
Yeah,
about.
prior to that, we did a continuance of your case. All right, has everyone had a chance to look at the intergovernmental agreements?
Yes.
Normally we make them for 1 year. This year we decided to make them for 4 years, so we don't have to keep readdressing it. So these will actually end on end of 2027. Do I have a motion to accept or reject?
Motion to accept.
Do I have a second? Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Sorry, those opposed? Motion carries. All right, item 4, I'm going to move that we remove that from the agenda. Can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor of removing it from the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, moving on to returns, voter returns. Little training for everyone. Here again, it's me. All right, so today's training will be OCGA 21-2-490 to 504 and SEB Rule 183-1-12-.12 and 183-1-15. Next. Somebody have the clicker? That's you. All right, so the first one is 21-2-490. It basically says if during the election day, the offices will be opened from the beginning of the election until the Secretary of State says we can go home. Next. Go ahead, go up. Yeah, one. Yeah, you missed one. All right, this basically says that everything will be done in public and that no one is allowed to unseal any envelopes without the election supervisor or superintendent granting them permission to open the unsealed envelopes. Next. This basically says the computation and canvassing will be done in the election offices or at a designated place, and the election supervisor or superintendent shall give at least 1 week's notice prior to, and it will be posted throughout their office. Next. And this just goes on to say, hey, once again, it has to be done in public. And you cannot stop counting until all the votes are counted on that day. And prior to, the superintendent shall compare the registration figures with the certificates returned by the poll officer showing the number of persons who voted in each district or number of ballots cast. And if there's any discrepancies, she must or they must note the discrepancies and find out why there's a discrepancy. Okay. The election superintendent shall ensure all properly cast ballots that are received by the deadline to receive ballots are processed, verified, and tabulated as soon as possible, and shall not cease such count and tabulation until all such ballots are counted and tabulated. But there's a caveat on the shall not cease. It allows for reasonable or limited breaks so long as the processing, counting, and tabulating of ballots resumes as soon as possible. And this just talks about write-in candidates. Only write-in candidates will be computer or canvassed and yeah. Next. This talks about recount procedures. All right, we won't have to go over this. If anyone can tell me how many ballots I have to have when I do a recount. You remember we did training back in March on this. You should all know. I'll even let the election staff. Okay, you have to have a 100 ballots. 100 ballots, 75 of them have to be from election day, 25 have to be from hand marked ballots from absentee ballots. So now we got to move on. All right, so the only time we would do a recount is, there's a couple of times, is if we suspect that there's a problem with the count on a machine or some other issue. So we would issue a recount. Also, if electors come to us, there's got to be 3 electors. If they say, hey, I think there's a problem with this machine, that can also initiate a recount. So there's a difference between a recount and a hand recount. Most people think when they say, hey, I want to do a recount, that means we're going to take the ballots out and we're going to actually hand count them. That's not the way the SEB rule works. SEB rule says you're going to take all your scanners, you're going to verify that the scanners work properly. If they work properly, you're going to use the scanners to recount your votes. If they don't work properly, you're allowed to hand recount, or a judge can order you to do a hand recount. That's the only time we'll ever do a hand recount. Next. And if a candidate loses by not more than 0.5% of the total votes, then they can request a recount. But they only have 2 business days after the certification of the election to request a recount. Next. And this just talks about if there's a constitutional amendment or a binding referendum, how that works, if there's less than. This talks about the preparation and filing by the superintendent of 4 copies of consolidated returns in an election. And it says 1 copy to be posted at the office, 1 copy filed and recorded as a permanent record in minutes of the superintendent's office. 1 copy shall be sealed and filed with the clerk, and 1 copy shall returned immediately to the Secretary of State, unless required as follows. And the next slide is just, this is the caveat to the Secretary of State. So I'm not going to go over. All right, pre-certification. So back in, I believe it was 2020, the legislature said, hey, just to check to make sure that our election equipment is working, we're going to have you do a pre-certification audit. The Secretary of State gets to decide which office is going to be, or which offices are going to be audited. And there's audit rules that go along with that. And the biggest thing is everything has to be done in public. We don't do anything in private. And it has to be done before the certification. Okay?
That's also what we call risk limiting audit.
Correct. Risk limiting audit. All right, number of votes required for a runoff. Each candidate must receive a majority. That's 50% plus 1 vote is a majority in Georgia. Hey, back up. So that has to be done within 28 days after the day of holding of the proceeding. So you have 28 days to get a runoff done in the state of Georgia. All right, next.
That's also, let me just point out, that's also why.
Hello.
That's why we also, sometimes in runoffs don't get 3 weeks of advance voting in. Because you have to think that we have to get a new ballot, we have to proof a new ballot, we have to order the ballots, we have to get the project, logic and accuracy has to be completed on all the machines. So that it is longer turnaround time than it used to be. So now we can get it probably at least 2 weeks in and 1 Saturday. But that 28 days is why sometimes in runoffs, you don't have 3 weeks of advance voting.
Yeah, it says as soon as possible. Any questions for me? All right, I got some questions for y'all.
Okay.
As soon as they come up.
Oh.
I don't have them memorized. True or false, the election office is liable to close at 7 p.m. on election night.
False.
Okay.
We
Regarding
wish.
computation and canvassing of returns, when must the notification be posted and where? So we're telling the public we're going to canvass the election results. And how soon before that do we have to post something in our somewhere?
7 days.
7 days or 1 week? And where does that have to be posted at?
Conspicuous area.
Right. Somewhere in the office. All right, it's got to be conspicuous. All right, what is the meaning of shall not cease regarding tabulation? What do they mean? What does SEB mean when they say shall not cease?
To continue until it's complete with the caveat of being able to stop for brief breaks.
Okay, excellent, excellent. True or false, all writing candidates' votes will be counted.
False.
False. Mickey Mouse, we will not count Mickey Mouse. Next. What percentage could cause a recount?
It's down 1/2 of 1%.
1/2 of 1%. All right. When must a candidate request a recount?
I think 2 days.
Okay, 2 business days.
Mhm.
Okay. How many copies of the consolidated returns are made?
4.
Okay. What types of ballots should be utilized in a pre-certification audit? All the types. Okay. All types that would be, so if we had good, you're right. All types.
Yeah, like, we
What
want
percentage
guidance.
must a candidate win by to avoid a runoff?
50% plus 1.
All right. How many days after an election must a runoff occur?
28.
When must a recanvass be completed by?
anytime prior to the certification.
Very good.
Go
Thank you.
Kelly.
All right. Next.
Y'all did good.
All right. That ends our training. Next up is important upcoming dates. Board meeting will be this Thursday at 4 PM. And then we have a Monday, November 6th at 4 PM. Veterans Day is going to be Friday, November 10th. All offices will be closed. Thanksgiving holidays, Thursday and Friday, November 23rd, 24th. All offices will be closed. December's board meeting will be Thursday, December 21st. And the Christmas holidays will be Friday, December 22nd through Tuesday, December 26th, 2023. Moving on to additional public comments. This can be on anything that you would like to comment on.
Chairman, can I say something real quick?
Sure.
So Thursday's meeting, as far as posting an agenda, it's only going to be, it's not going to have minutes. It's not going to have financials
Right.
again. It's not going to have all of this. It'll just be the continuance of the challenge that was held here today.
Correct. We'll convene and move right into a public hearing.
On that December 21st board meeting, are we keeping it Thursday or are we going to go to Wednesday?
Thursday. Now, if you would like to move that at our next meeting, you can request it. You can make a motion to.
No, I think it'll be all right.
Okay. Any additional public comments? Okay. If there are no objections, this meeting will adjourn. Since there are no objections, this meeting is adjourned.